There is a reason Cleopatra's name still echoes across centuries. Not just as a queen, not just as a ruler, but as a woman whose presence alone could disarm emperors, bend history, and make the most powerful men of her time obsessed. Why? What was it about her? Some say it was her beauty, others say it was her wealth, but history tells us something different. And today, you will discover the untold secrets of Cleopatra's irresistible charm. Stay with me until the very end, because the last secret is the one most people completely overlook, and it might just change the way you think about attraction forever. Imagine this: Rome, at the height of its power. Julius Caesar, the man who commanded legions, feared and admired across the world, steps into Egypt, and there, in the grand halls of Alexandria, he meets Cleopatra. According to stories, she had herself rolled inside a carpet, carried into Caesar's presence, and then unrolled dramatically before him. It wasn't just an entrance, it was a performance. From the very first moment, she showed that she understood something most people still don't. Charm isn't just about looks. It's about experience. It's about how you make someone feel. Cleopatra wasn't just beautiful. In fact, some historians argue she wasn't conventionally stunning at all. What set her apart was her presence. She had the ability to make every man in the room feel like the center of her universe. She listened deeply, her eyes locked, her attention unwavering. And here's the truth. Even today in modern America, the people we can't forget are not always the most beautiful. They're the ones who make us feel seen. So ask yourself, when was the last time you made someone feel like they were the only person in the room? That, right there, was Cleopatra's first secret. But presence alone wasn't enough. Cleopatra mastered the art of words. She spoke multiple languages fluently. She didn't need translators. She spoke directly to foreign rulers, making them feel understood. That gave her an edge no one else had. And more than words, she knew how to tell stories. Her conversations weren't small talk. They were magnetic. She painted pictures with her words, guiding men into her world, making them feel part of something greater than themselves. Even today, think about it. The people we can't forget are often the ones who tell us stories that stick in our minds. They're the ones who use words not to impress, but to immerse. And Cleopatra? She could make even the silence between her words feel like a secret waiting to be uncovered. Cleopatra never shrank herself to fit anyone's expectations. She entered a room as if she belonged there because she believed she did. That kind of confidence is rare. Most people, even today, are constantly apologizing for their existence, apologizing for being too loud, too quiet, too much, not enough. But Cleopatra embodied a truth: when you stop apologizing for who you are, people start leaning in to see why you're so certain of your worth. This was her edge. Men weren't obsessed with her because she begged for attention. They were obsessed because she didn't need it yet. She commanded it effortlessly. In just a moment, I'll tell you about the most dangerous secret. Cleopatra used the one that made even Mark Antony risk his empire for her. But before we go there, let me ask you, how much of your own charm do you hold back? How often do you silence your voice, doubt your worth, or step back when you should be stepping forward. Because Cleopatra's story isn't just history, it's a mirror, and what you're about to discover could shift the way you see yourself. Here's the truth. Cleopatra never gave everything away. She understood something vital: people crave what they can't fully grasp. With Caesar, with Antony, with every man who crossed her path, she revealed just enough to fascinate, but never enough to be predictable. It's like music. A song isn't powerful because of the notes alone, it's powerful because of the pauses, the space between, the tension. Cleopatra was the master of leaving space, of leaving questions unanswered, of making men wonder what she was thinking, what she wanted, what she might do next. And in that mystery, they found themselves chasing her, desperate to know more. Here's something most people forget. Cleopatra inherited a crumbling throne. Egypt was under threat, her family divided, her power unstable. But she never presented herself as a victim. She turned her challenges into weapons. She used her vulnerability as a way to connect, and her intelligence as a way to lead. That's another secret to her charm. She didn't pretend to be perfect. She transformed her flaws into fascination. And isn't that true today as well? The people we admire most are often not flawless. They're the ones who know how to turn their scars into stories. Now, we've uncovered 5 of Cleopatra's secrets already: presence, storytelling, confidence, mystery, and transformation. But there's one more that made her unforgettable. One more that made men not just attracted to her, but willing to fight wars for her. And in part 2, you'll see why Cleopatra's final secret isn't about beauty, wealth, or even power. It's about something much deeper. Because the truth is, the greatest obsession doesn't come from what you show on the outside, but from what you awaken on the inside. Stay with me. Part 2. When we left off, I told you that Cleopatra had one more secret, one that went beyond presence, storytelling, confidence, mystery, and even turning weakness into strength. This final layer of her charm explains why men risked kingdoms for her, why Mark Antony, one of Rome's greatest generals, would turn his back on power, on politics, on Rome itself, just to be with her. But before I reveal it, let's step into their world. Picture this: Mark Antony, a man of war, a conqueror, one of the most powerful figures of Rome, bold, fearless, admired by soldiers, and feared by enemies. When he summoned Cleopatra to meet him, she didn't arrive like an ordinary ruler. No, she arrived on a golden barge sailing down the Nile, sails soaked in purple, oars of silver, her attendants dressed as goddesses, incense filling the air. Mark Antony was a man who thought he had seen it all. Yet that day, he saw something no battlefield had ever shown him. A queen who made her entrance not just as a woman, but as a living myth. And in that moment, she didn't just win his attention, she won his imagination. Here lies another of Cleopatra's secrets. She wasn't simply attractive, she was unforgettable because she turned herself into an experience. Antony didn't fall in love with just a woman. He fell in love with the theater she created around herself. She blurred the line between reality and legend, making him feel like he was living inside a story greater than life itself. And here's the truth: attraction isn't just about what you look like. It's about what people feel when they're around you. Cleopatra mastered this. She made men feel part of something timeless, dramatic, divine. And when you make someone feel like they've stepped into a story that could outlive them, they will never forget you. But Cleopatra wasn't only spectacle. She was fire, passion, emotional intensity. With Antony, she didn't play it safe. She mirrored his energy. She argued, she laughed, she wept, she celebrated, she met him at his extremes. Because here's something most people forget. People don't become obsessed with what feels ordinary. They become obsessed with what feels extraordinary. Cleopatra was not comfortable. She was unforgettable because every moment, with her carried weight, every word, every glance, every silence burned itself into memory. And in a world where most people today fear being too much, Cleopatra showed that intensity is not a weakness, it's magnetism. Another secret most overlooked: Cleopatra never attached herself to men without offering something equal in return. With Caesar, she offered Egypt's wealth and stability. With Antony, she offered an alliance that strengthened his claim against Rome's rivals. But it wasn't just politics, it was psychology. Men didn't see her as a burden. They saw her as a partner who elevated their own power. And that is the hidden truth about attraction. People stay when they feel stronger with you than without you. Cleopatra embodied this. She made powerful men feel even more powerful by her side. That wasn't manipulation, it was strategy, and it made her unforgettable. Cleopatra also mastered the art of contrast. She could be tender one moment and commanding the next. She could be playful and then deeply serious. She could give Antony peace and then ignite chaos in his heart. This unpredictability kept men endlessly engaged, because when someone always knows what you're going to do, they stop chasing. But when you remain a mystery wrapped in contrasts, they can't stop coming back. Cleopatra wasn't one note. She was an entire symphony, sometimes gentle, sometimes explosive, always unforgettable. And that is why her lovers could never fully walk away. Here is the most powerful secret. Cleopatra made men feel like their lives would be remembered forever because of her. With Caesar, with Antony, she wasn't just a lover. She was a gateway to legacy. She tied her name to their names, so that thousands of years later, we still speak of them not just as rulers, but as men who were captivated by her. This is what made her obsession eternal. She awakened the desire in men to be remembered, to matter, to be part of history. Think about it. Every human being, even today, wants to matter, wants to feel their life leaves a mark. Cleopatra understood this primal desire and tied it to her presence. And that, more than beauty, more than wealth, more than power, was her ultimate charm. Now pause for a moment and think. When people come into your life, do they leave feeling like they lived something extraordinary? Do they leave feeling stronger, deeper, more alive? Do they feel that knowing you changes their story? That is Cleopatra's final secret. She made herself unforgettable because she wasn't just a person, she was a story people wanted to be part of. Now, you might think this is the end of Cleopatra's story, but the truth is, the obsession she inspired carried consequences, deadly ones. For Antony, for Rome, and even for Cleopatra herself. And in part 3, we'll dive into the cost of obsession, why the very charm that made her irresistible also led to her downfall, and why, even in her final moments. She proved that true allure is not about how long you live, but about how impossible it is to forget you. Stay with me, because the ending of Cleopatra's story is not just history, it's a lesson for all of us. Part 3. We've uncovered Cleopatra's secrets, her presence, her storytelling, her confidence, her mystery, her transformation, her power as an experience, her intensity, her alignment with power, her contrast, and her gift of awakening legacy. But every story of obsession has a cost, and Cleopatra's was no exception. Mark Antony was once one of Rome's strongest generals, but his devotion to Cleopatra, his willingness to place her above his loyalty to Rome, brought him into direct conflict with Octavian, Caesar's heir. The world watched as Antony, the warrior, and Cleopatra, the queen, stood together against the rising might of Rome, but the outcome was inevitable. At the Battle of Actium, their forces were crushed. Defeat was no longer a possibility, was a reality. And yet, even in that moment of ruin, Antony couldn't walk away from her. He couldn't stop chasing the story they had written together. His obsession sealed his fate. When Antony believed Cleopatra was dead, he fell on his own sword, but he was wrong. She still lived. Wounded and bleeding, he was carried to her, and there, in the last embrace of his life, he died in her arms. But Cleopatra knew her own end was near. Octavian would parade her through Rome, humiliate her, strip her of her power, her legend, her story. And so, she chose a different ending. With a venomous asp hidden in a basket, Cleopatra let the serpent strike. She chose to meet death on her own terms, her crown intact, her legacy sealed. This, perhaps, was her last secret. Cleopatra understood that charm, power, and obsession could all fade, but legacy endures. Her death was not defeat, it was her final performance. She denied her enemies the chance to rewrite her story. Instead, she wrote her own ending, one that still echoes thousands of years later. And this is why Cleopatra remains unforgettable, not because she lived forever, but because she lived and died in a way that ensured she would never be erased. So what do we take from her story? That true allure isn't about beauty alone. It's not about wealth, or titles, or even power. It's about the mark you leave on the hearts and minds of others. Cleopatra's charm teaches us this: to be present, to speak with power, to walk with confidence, to embrace mystery, to turn flaws into fascination, to create experiences, not just moments, to awaken in others the desire to matter. Because in the end, people may forget your face, they may forget your words, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And that, more than anything, is the timeless secret of Cleopatra. As you think about her story, ask yourself, what legacy are you leaving in the lives of those around you? When people walk away from you, do they feel more alive, more powerful, more certain of who they are? Do they feel your presence echoing long after you've gone? Because if Cleopatra's life whispers one truth across the centuries, it's this: real power is not in being remembered as beautiful, it's in being remembered as unforgettable. And if this story touched you, if you found yourself inspired or even curious about what history still has to teach us, then take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Together we can keep uncovering the timeless truths that still shape our lives.